got millions of reasons to let it all go. Hope we're not too broken. I know I'm not always strong, and I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, been fighting with. I lost my best friend to 23. She left her body and hovered above me. I saw no shadow, I looked around, searched every building and home that I found. I saw no shadow. I lost my best friend to 23. She left her body and hovered above me. I saw no shadow, I looked around, searched every building and home that I found. I saw no shadow, but felt the glow. The warmth inside me, it kept me afloat. It felt like heaven, it found my bones and gave me comfort when I feel alone. Now you're gone, I'm alone. I guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone. If I fall, break my bones, I will scream even louder. 'Cause I'm not dying alone. I lost my best friend to 23. She left her body and hovered above me. My best friend to 23. I heard the heavens crying above me. They gained an angel, I lost a friend. I felt like dying again and again. I went through hell, stared at death, but I keep fighting with each living breath. I saw no way out from where I stood. Felt like the fire had burned me for. Now you're gone, I'm alone. I guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone. If I fall, break my bones, I will scream even louder. 'Cause I'm not dying alone. I lost my best friend. Don't do lost my best friend to 23. She left her body and hovered above me. I saw no shadow, I looked around, searched every building and home that I found. I saw no shadow, but felt the glow. The warmth inside me, it kept me afloat. It felt like heaven, it found my bones and gave me comfort when I feel alone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Owlet tournament. My name is Mysfyt, and we got a great show for you tonight. It's going to be episode 9 of the Nest. We will be covering our past week of games, and I'm really excited to get into it because we had some really big games this week. We covered them a bit on last Nest, but we should talk about them for this Nest since last one was late, of course. So yes, let's get right into the action. I'm joined tonight by Sempra and Amintas, which I'm very excited about to have both of you here. Love the picture, Sempra, very much. He's a great player. But why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself since you've never been on Nest before?
I play McCree.
Sick. Mintus, what about you?
You probably have seen me before if you have watched previous broadcasts recently. I just casted which match was it? It was the PT versus DCR game last week, but overall, I'm just chilling, casting. I'm getting back into coaching as well. I'm on a contenders team again, which is really good. I'm happy to be back at that level and like actually proving to people like, yo, I can still do stuff. But that's to be announced in a little bit. So that's just what I've been up to lately.
I see. Well, congratulations on that, of course. Let's get right into the action. We got some good games this week. We'll start off with the one you casted, PT versus DCR. We'll show up that match card really quick. And obviously, you did cast this one. Did go a bit one-sided, but why don't you give us your thoughts on it from your perspective?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of it came down to adjustment. So Paradise Tempest, they lost the first map pretty handedly, or the first point of, I believe it was Ilias. Yeah, they got pretty much stomped because of some recontests. And then the first adjustment they made was Lars going over to Sombra, which was like so massive for shutting down the tanks at DCR. And they just failed to be able to like change their playstyle over the course of the match. Whereas PT was like, we're going to adjust to double shield. We can go to brawl. We can index into 6-man if we have to. And every single time they like made one of those switch ups, DCR was just they were just scratching their heads pretty much the whole way through. There were some standout performances at the beginning for sure from the backline of DCR, which I've talked up immensely in the past. Also, Final Gambit had some flashes in the pan, and Zebra Cookie as well when he was playing Junkrat on King's Row. But the problem is their strategies are super binary, and they're relying on characters that, like Junkrat, that they're feast or famine, and they were kind of starving in this match.
I like that. That was a nice little. I like that. That was a good joke. All right, we'll go over to you now, Sempra. What did you think about this match?
I watched a little, I think some of it, but Zebra Cookie was doing well. I played with this guy in comp a couple times. He's like a Master's tank, so I guess off tank transfers over to DPS pretty well. He's doing a lot. I think what's notable is that Sixes isn't doing much more damage than their DPS. Like looking at Final Gambit's damage versus Sixes, but he's getting picks, which tells me that Final Gambit is like shooting at the tanks, or Sixes is smarter with his target priority or something like that. But it looks like DCR has life in them, but they just aren't doing it correctly. Something like that. But I think Zebra Cookie Final Gambit's gonna be a pretty good lineup. Zebra Cookie's already showing himself, so that's pretty big.
Yeah, no, I definitely do think Danger Close has some stuff they can work on, but right now I think they have a lot of unrealized potential, and given how contested the upper mid part of this league is, I think it will be really hard for them to distinguish themselves and make playoffs, but we'll have to see later on. As far as my thoughts on this match, this went about as I expected it to go. Paradise Tempest, obviously a really strong team. I didn't expect them to have any trouble with this match, and they really didn't. Still one of the top teams in the tournament despite recent setbacks for them. So I'm excited to see them put things back together. But we can throw things over now to our next match, which is going to be Team Gralu versus Hyperion. And once again, Team Gralu dropping control map to Hyperion before turning around and winning the next 3. So seems to be a little of a troll issue for them from what I can see, losing that one too. We'll start off with you, Semper, since you know a lot about both these teams. Why don't you give us your take on this one?
I watched most of this match. I don't know if it's streamed or not. I was literally in the game. And one thing I noticed is that Team Gralu were legitimately trying during control. I think they had Clown go DPS instead, but he was getting hard DPS gapped by the king. Sorry, Clown. But like, I still think that Hyperion is a pretty good team. I think that Team Gralu was actually trying. I obviously can't hear their comms, whether they're calling the troll or something, but they looked like they were legitimately trying. But they picked it up after the first match. They put Clown back on tank, and they put like Egg Cushion. I think they benched Egg Cushion and Alcura. The first one, that might have been a reason, but they put them back in, and they started rolling again. I think a team that player that's kind of under the radar. I think honestly, there's a couple players that they're a little bit overrated. One of them is not the King. I think the King is proving why people love him so much. But I think Felix Penguin goes under the radar as a really good player. He's honestly going crazy on BAP. Whether he's heal botting and not doing enough damage is I can't tell. But he's been doing a lot. He's a pretty good BAP. So I think that Felix Penguin is one of the best supports. He just goes under the radar a lot because his team is 2-4, but I don't think he deserves that. And obviously the King has been going crazy. Like I said, I don't think he's one of the overrated players. He's a very, very, very talented player. So he's also been playing hit scan and he's crazy at that. So
All right. What about you, Amintas? What do you think?
So yeah, to touch on what Sempra discussed, I think there's some bright spots on Hyperion for sure, and a lot of individual performances. But on the other side, like Team Growlawoo, definitely exposing one of the biggest problems with players at this level of caliber, the inability to track people on off angles. And the moment you see like they go off of control and they, stop swapping in random players on their off rolls, or I guess it would be their off rolls because some of them, they go back to back. But like the default Growlawoo playstyle is to just take as many angles as possible. And especially teams like Hyperion that favor Brawl, you're going to really struggle to deal with those if you don't track them properly and actually like shut them out. I noticed a lot of other matches, they'll just have people sit behind enemy teams and never leave. They just won't leave the off angle until you actually go and push them. And if no one is capable of learning how to counter that playstyle, there's no way that anyone's going to ever beat Growlawoo in a best of 5 series because they're going to pull that out eventually, right? Like you can't just force rush and force a 6v6 brawl comp on every single map for 3 maps in a row and try to take them down like that. You have to, adapt to what they're throwing at you. And, for what I discussed in the previous series with PT making adaptations over the course of the match, I think a team like PT, even though it didn't work out for them last stage, it's probably going to be one of the best contenders to try to beat Growlawoo in this upcoming Stage 2 playoffs.
All right, I think that is quite a bold take, but still, I do agree with your takes on Growlawoo, the angle control thing. They're all very good. They play a lot of survivable characters. They're all very good at understanding how to control off angles, and it makes them really hard because there's a lot of people at this level who are on an off angle, and the second they get shot at, they leave and they're afraid. But Growlawoo is like, okay, well, you're shooting at me, but I'm also shooting at you, and I think I can win, and they do. They just win the duels. They win. They find the picks, and it's really hard for them to. For other teams in this division to find a way to beat that play style. And I'm hoping we can find a team that's going to stand up to them. Something that's disappointing me right now is seeing how close like the 5 teams below Growlawoo are to each other, and then just seeing Growlawoo just like the exact same distance but above them. Like that's annoying me right now. I want to see the top get contested. I want to see the Kings get felled. But still, I got to give props to Growlawoo. They definitely understand this game very, very well, and they're exploiting a lot of the weaknesses of the teams that they're seeing. But yeah, we will move on to our next game now, which was Otters versus Phoenix. Not a whole lot to discuss here. I mean, we kind of knew how this one was going to go. Phoenix, obviously, with no stats, I guess. They needed to. They have a lot of things to work on. I'm hopeful that maybe they can turn around, but right now 0-7, going up against one of the teams that's promoted to be one of the top teams in the tournament right now. We kind of knew how this one was going to go. We'll start off with you. And just what do you think happened here?
What else is there to say? I think it was kind of a loading screen loss for sure. Just based off of everything that I've seen so far out of Phoenix, I think it's like just so many different issues and like fires you're going to have to put out from here. Where a team like Otter Oxide, this is a great statement game for them to kind of prove that, yeah, we made some adjustments in the DPS lineup and like, yeah, they're performing. Like, just take a look at Hawk. And it's so funny too because you look at like the map choices from Phoenix after they lose that first point of Busan, they go to Rialto and Kings Row. It's like, well, that's not going to really change what our Oxide is doing at all, especially on Busan. Like a lot of teams, they start off on Rush there, and something in a best of 5 series that most teams just totally forget about is forcing the enemy team out of their comfort zone. Phoenix doesn't even know where their own comfort zone is. It feels like they're just kind of floundering around right now. Maybe a full reset is like the answer in terms of just like how to fix the team, but at the moment, nothing is going to change.
Yeah, no, Silent Marine pointing out in our chat the KDR difference between these two teams right now. Otter Oxide sporting the almost 3.5. That is like 3.5 kills for every death that they have, and that is
like 4 back-to-back team fights in a row where
that's
they just
absurd.
lose, right?
That's a very high number. We'll toss it over to you, Sempra. You got any thoughts on this one?
I think Hawk's a god. I think
I mean, I don't disagree.
feel like-
think
I
he's
feel
really
like-
good.
I think one thing a lot of people throw is a good DPS can't carry. But one thing a good DPS can do is make a good team look better. I think that's what Hawk does.
All right.
That's pretty much all I have to say. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, there's not a whole lot to say for this one. It went pretty much by the books. But yeah, that's definitely what we expected. So we throw it over to our, I would say, the most interesting game we had this week, which was Los Beefers versus Rogue Dragons. And we did cover this on Last Nest. Obviously, Beefers able to fell the rising stars of Rogue Dragons here, have made some roster adjustments that have come back pretty strong here in Stage 2. Los Beefers able to take this 3-1 in a pretty close match. And I'll start with this one just because I have quite a bit to say about it. Of course, I was beef lever fit this week, and that is because I truly do beef leave now. I was unsure for a while, but after seeing this game, I think that they are a very, very solid team. I really like seeing the Sigma Ball composition, the rock and roll composition, as it were, come out from this team. I think it is a composition that is still very strong. I think a lot of teams don't run it or don't know how to run it at this elo just because of how difficult the timing is. You got your ball tracer group and you've got your Sigma group, and it's really hard to time the pushes with the slams of the pile drive and the tracer follow with that Sigma group pushing onto the enemy team. It's really hard to get it in the right positions at the right timings, but Los Beefers ran it very, very well. Firebats, once again, is just a menace on that ball. I know Jungle God loved watching this one. But yeah, Talo and Blue Jay as well. They kind of like every other map. One of them was the star player. Talo had really, really strong performances on Rialto. Blue Jay was doing everything on Ilios. It was really, really fun to watch how this team played. And it was a little bit interesting to watch Rogue Dragons struggle as much as they did, since they have been such a strong team as of late. But still, I really enjoyed watching this game, really enjoyed casting it with my buddy Chinote. But yeah, we'll toss it over to you now, Sempra. What did you have to think about this one?
Yeah, I think they made a really big mistake. I don't know why they were trying to force Brawl on every single map, but Brawl gets hard countered by Sigma Ball. I don't understand. I didn't understand it, but I heard that they're switching it up. This is a hot take, but I think that the best DPS duo of any team is Wrath and Karma, okay?
Really?
And I feel like you put those two on a comp where they excel. Like what I'm suggesting is they go something like double bubble. So you can have Wrath on his Kree and you have Karma on his Tracer, and those two are just gonna carry the team. Right. So yeah.
That's your thoughts? Fair enough. No, I don't think that's true. I think Raph and Karma are very solid. I don't think it's a stretch to say they're the best DPS duo in the league. I definitely think they're both very strong players. But yeah, though I think a double bubble comp switch would be good for them. Like you mentioned, I think putting a player like Karma on May is just not.
It's like
Yeah,
you
he's
have
good at
these,
May,
you have
but,
these
like,
playmakers, and you
yeah,
just have to put them on. You put them on these heroes like can't make plays for the team. Like
yeah. Especially in the Sigma Ball, like May can't do a whole lot.
my best
By the
example
time
is
she freezes ball, someone's dead. Like
a lot of teams will run double bubble versus 6-man. They'll run one of the two. If you have a really strong Ana player, you don't want to play 6-man because your playmaking Ana is now on Moira and can't do anything. So I feel like you take that logic and you put it on DPS. Putting your playmaking DPS on a Mei is just not the best choice. I don't
Fair
know.
enough.
Like you could even if you really don't want to force Brawl, you could put them on like a Reaper, or even just because you can put them on Tracer, even though Tracer doesn't work with Brawl. It doesn't really matter at like Diamond.
Yeah,
Like I
no,
feel like
for
that's
sure.
just better than forcing a Mei. And
For sure.
Mei doesn't do anything with Sigma Ball, but like, but yeah, I think that was just a comp diff.
Fair enough. I'll throw it over. I always like every time I have to say your name, I have to remember how to pronounce it. It's
It's
Amintas, right?
Amintas. There you go.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, give
No,
us
you're
your thoughts.
totally fine. I think it's a great look from Beefers, especially getting off to a good early start. You know, you guys brought up a lot of points about how like Rogue Dragon was forcing Brawl. They won Gibraltar, which is crazy to me, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a Brawl team on a double bubble map, and they're like still beating another team that's very competent on how to counter Brawl. So interesting anomaly in the scoreline there.
They were like
But
Torp Reaper, low speed.
yeah, it's just
low
hard
spot
counter
attack.
dive, right? Yeah, like interesting ideas there. But nonetheless, I think Rogue Dragons has already proven competence on Brawl. Right now, it's about how to deal with counter comps, like you guys brought up with the Sig Ball comp, and also just being able to flex to other looks and playing through your DPS and Ref and Karma, like you brought up, Sempra, is probably going to be their best bet going forward. Echo in particular, with the hit scan nerfs, with just like more flexibility in terms of hero choice these days. I think Echo and just putting like either Raf or Karma on Echo and then mirroring it with a Tracer is a really good choice. But I do have to call into question like how Beefers is going to perform in these next couple of weeks, because like they're going to probably beat Crusaders, right? And they'll go 3-1 in stage 2. But how does that actually transition into playoffs? Like when you're going to have to play a lot of Brawl maps and be competent on that comp as well. I mean, obviously, like Firebat's very talented ball player, right? But I don't really have a lot of memories of stand-up performances from him on Rhine. So that's just like another weakness of this team that maybe other teams can figure out how to exploit.
I think that's definitely fair. I do want to mention, I think the ball is kind of a double-edged sword for them, because
Right.
while ball I think is a very strong like character if you have a good player at him, like Firebats, I think it can sometimes be hard to pair something with a ball on certain maps, specifically like control maps. Like they did not run the Sigma ball on control from what I remember. I think they ran it out. They did run it on one of the maps, I believe. I forget which one. They ran Ilios, so I forget which map they played the Sigma ball on. It might have been Ruins, I want to say. I'm not sure though. But like it gets hard to pair with the ball sometimes, right? There are just
Right.
compositions that are a little bit better, right? Like they'll try to run their ball Winston dive, and that's like okay. But against certain comps, you need the diva there to eat some damage. You need the diva there for peel. You need the diva can just be better. Sometimes you need the Zarya because the bubbles are just really strong. It's just, I think it can be good, but if teams can figure out how to deal with Firebats, or they can come up with a strategy for making him less effective, I think it's really going to hurt Beaver's chances, because I don't think Firebats is very good at much else other than like maybe Hog. But even then, like the best, I would say Hog composition is either Sigma Hog or Ball Hog. And again, it's like it's kind of the same type of composition. So if they figure out a strategy for dealing with one of them, they could probably figure out a strategy for dealing with the other. And I'm not sure, but I do think we're starting to see Beavers really get some confidence. And that's what scares me about this team right now, right? They are a team that runs a lot of off meta stuff. They were a team that runs weird things that people don't scrim against. And that's their strength. That's why they give teams like PT so much trouble, is because they're not used to seeing looks like this. They have to make the adjustments mid game. They're not used to doing it in scrims. And getting a team like that confident, that's scary. That's really scary. So I'm definitely be keeping an eye on these guys going into next week. But yes, that's going to do it here for our recap section. We can talk now about our standings. We're going to first go over like all standings, then get into our groups so we can look at it a little bit more clearly. As you can see here, the Noctowl division is kind of, I would say, dominating the standings here. We do have Paradise Tempest, and then all the other ones, they're kind of in the middle. So they are currently higher up. And then we, of course, have Team Gralu and Otter Oxide in our 2 and 3 spot. The rest of the Dartrix division kind of below right now in that 8, 9, and 10 spot. But again, this whole standings is not indicative of playoffs. We will now show our group standings, which is how we will do things. Top 3 teams from each of these divisions will be making it in. And right now, that is Los Beefers, Paradise, and Rogue from the Noctowl division, which is very surprising. Crusaders and Danger Close Red are still both pretty high up in the standings. So seeing either of those teams get knocked out would be kind of surprising, I would say. Rogue Dragons as well. I really think the Noctowl division is the division to watch because I think it's very unclear which teams will make it out of there. So definitely want to keep an eye on. Then we move down to our Dartrix division. This one's a little bit more standard. I'm pretty sure everyone predicts Team Growlithe, Otters, and Hyperion to come out of this one because Volume Zero and Phoenix are the bottom 2 teams in the league. However, still possible for them to make playoffs if the stars align. So we'll have to see how that goes in our future matches, which we will talk about now. It's time for the prediction segment. I'm really excited for this one. Actually, no, before predictions, it's power rankings. Excuse me. I forgot how I ran my own show. Imagine that. Who do I think I am? But yes, let's talk about power rankings real quick here. You will see that my power rankings have a very strange change in them. I have hyped up Otter Oxide so much over the past, 3 shows? And now they're much, much lower. I'll explain that in a bit. But we'll start off with the God Gamers tier, which of course is still going to be TG. We've talked a lot about them. They're the best team in the league. That's it. That's the entire. I don't have anything else to say about them. They've proved it time and time again, and until someone else can beat them or actually, take a significant amount of maps off them, I think they're going to stay there, in my opinion. In our decent gamers tier, I dropped Otters to this division for 2 reasons. Number one, because I felt like I couldn't compare Otters to TG until I watched them actually play, and also because I scrimmed them on a team that I was ringing for. And they played very slow. Now, we talk a lot in Overwatch about how tempo is very important. The teams with the faster tempo will win. That's why Team Growlithe, even though they run weird comps, is so much better than every other team. It's because they play the game so much faster than every other team that other teams, can't keep up. That's why they're able to get so much value, in my opinion. So seeing Otters play as slow as they did, slower than another team that I've scrimmed, which was Rogue Dragons, that kind of clued me in, maybe I'm overrating this team a little bit. I will say, I still think Otters is a very strong team, but I am going to knock them down for now just because I think currently they play much slower than I expected them to play after they made their adjustments. And so I believe I was overrating them a little bit. Talking about the other teams real quick, of course, I have Paradise Tempest and Los Beavers at the top there. We did talk a little bit about the cycle of suck on the last nest, about how each of these teams has beaten each other. But I do think the way this is playing out is PT is above Los Beavers because they beat them, because they can deal with their weird stuff. And then Rogue Dragons and Crusaders are below Los Beavers because they run Brawl, which is a composition that is weak to what Los Beavers runs. So that's my thinking there. And then, of course, I have Rogue Dragons over Crusaders because they beat Crusaders. Then I have Otters below that because I think they play slower than everyone. So that's how my decent gamers tier shapes up. In the Some Sauce tier, nothing changes. Although Hyperion had an okay showing against Team Growlithe, they still kind of got destroyed, I felt. I felt like Team Growlithe was never really in danger of losing the game. A lot of the fights they lose, I feel, is due to overconfidence and mistakes they make, which they wouldn't make if they actually felt threatened. So I don't want to give Hyperion too much credit here. I still think Hyperion has a lot of good players, and I think they have the ability to rise. But again, I need to see them beat teams, not just be able to maybe take a map here or there. DCR still below. I don't think they are looking too solid right now. I think the Noctowl division is very strong. I don't think DCR will be able to rise in it. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm probably not. And then, of course, in the I Can Beat You Bare-Handed tier, we still have Volume Zero and Phoenix, who did not win their matches this week. So that is how my power ranking shakes up. I'm now going to go read this angry DM that Hawk just sent me. So yeah, you guys can talk about your power rankings. We'll start off with you, Sempra.
I named them after albums. Love is Rage 2, the greatest of all time. Team Growlithe, I think we all can agree that they're way ahead of everyone else. I think Otters, and without warning, is one of the greatest, but has a couple skips. But Otters, I think that they are still really good. I think it's really stupid to put Scrimbucks to rate people, but yeah, I still think they're number 2. And I still think PT is one of the best teams. After that, I think Rogue Dragons is okay, but they have stuff they need to improve, mostly forcing Brawl and working on the DPS. Same thing for Crusaders, they're pretty good, but they have rough edges. I put Los Beavers below Rogue Dragons, because I think Rogue Dragons is a better team. They just are interesting. The interesting comps ran by our Rogue Dragons. I think PT is still a top team because of the fact that losing your main tank is so huge that I don't think you can count that towards a loss. DCR is okay, like at best. I don't think they can beat any of the teams above them, like any of them, but they can beat all the teams below them. I don't think scrimbucks matter. I'm not using scrimbucks as a method of choice because that's stupid.
Okay.
Hyperion,
Calling out.
Hyperion, same thing. They're okay. They looked really good against TG in my opinion, but they need to work a lot of things. And then the bottom two teams are just the bottom two teams. Yeah, I think my list is pretty standard. Don't make any hot takes.
All right, we'll throw it over to you then, Amintas. I do see a couple of interesting takes in there, so why don't
Yeah,
you
sure.
clear this one off for us?
So Growlithe, we've spoken enough about that. I still think Los Beefers is like flying under the radar because they're on the come up. People are putting a lot of stock in past performances and like the fact that they're 3 and 4, which in my opinion is just ignorant because they kind of drew a group of death last time. Otter Oxide, Paradise Tempest, like two very difficult matchups. They also dropped a game to Volume 0 back then, which is like, yeah, like I'm not going to put stock in that anymore. They have been doing a lot better recently, and beating an up-and-coming Rogue Dragons, I think, signifies that, yes, you deserve to be in a tier above them, whereas Rogue Dragons is like a bit of a question mark for me. So that's kind of why I put Beefers in A and Dragons in B. Otter Oxide, you guys talked about already. Their DPS lineup is like by and far the highlight of the show for them. Paradise Tempest, I think their team play is head and shoulders above everybody else in this tier. Their ability to adapt is like by far their strongest suit. And while they don't have too many big standouts, I think as 6, they're definitely a force to be reckoned with still. Base tier, by the way, the tier names, I kept them the same from last time, but maybe I'll update them for the next one. I think Crusaders is still kind of a rush one-trick team. And while they're really good at it, it's not the meta anymore. It's a lot more about, taking skirmishes, taking brawls in multiple angles, just so many other comps besides that one nowadays. And Hyperion's a bit of the same, but they've got some different looks. Literally everybody in B tier is just the rush teams, it feels like.
Yeah.
And then and that's like the perfect baseline, right? Because if you can't defeat their rush, you probably don't deserve to be in the same tier as them or above them. But if that's all you play, you can't beat any of the teams that I put in A and S tier. So that's kind of why I have all 3 of them there, even disregarding some recent performances from them. I just think, fundamentally speaking, those 3 teams are really going to struggle against the top 4, but always beat the bottom 3. DCR, their first stage was basically a fluke at this point. I think they're not only unable to flex the way that they play in the matches, they also just struggle when they're presented with a playstyle that they don't understand right away. It takes them like 2 to 3 fights to swap heroes, change comp playstyle, take different rotations, and you're going to get exposed in a best of 5 series if you just play like that. And Volume 0 and Phoenix, I think, Volume 0 at this point probably deserves to be above Phoenix, but I can't really justify it just because, like, even a team like DCR would probably still beat Volume 0. So as for things to, like, get them out of that level, right? I think just probably finding something you're comfortable with. I think Volume 0 and Phoenix do have things to work with. It's about amplifying that and trying to get things like your backline a little bit more stable. Just play through your DPS or your tanks when they're feeling themselves, and forcing the team to adapt to you, I think, is like their best chance at getting a win. But they've just failed to get out of the gates in a lot of their matches. So that's kind of the way my power rankings shake out.
All right, fair enough. No, I don't know. I think you guys will have some good thought processes behind your takes. I do think maybe I put Otters a little bit low. I mean, Sempra, you've made fun of the fact that I'm using Scrimbucks here. But the fact that even when Otters needs to be able to play faster. They have the talent for sure. Hawk and McNewby is crazy. And I will mention that McNewby was not at the scrim that I was in. but it's not like Miraculous played poorly. I didn't really think that was the major issue. The major thing was just that their team did not play fast enough, in my opinion, to compete with the other teams in this league that play very, very fast and have good team play. And I could be wrong with this. I could completely be underselling them. It could just have been a bad day. Who knows? But from my experience in scrims, when you're having a bad day, tempo isn't really that affected. It's never, you don't go from being a super fast team to like a medium fast team at all. That doesn't happen. It's usually like, oh, you make a couple of mechanical errors, you misuse a cooldown that loses you a fight. You're not every fight playing slower than I like thought that they should be playing. So that's my take on that. I obviously could be wrong. Who knows? You know, these guys had the talent to like difference most of the teams in this league, in my opinion, right? Which is a Hawk McNewbie alone, I think is the best DPS line in the league. I know you said it was Raph Karma Sempra, but I think that's the best DPS line in the league. However, I'm not sure. I know that Saber mentioned that McNewbie might be like injured or something. Apparently he's having back problems, probably from carrying the team a little too much. That was a joke. Don't worry. But yeah, no, I think that wraps up our power ranking section here. Do you guys have any last thoughts?
I think you hit the nail on the head with most of that stuff. Yeah, pretty good.
All right. Let's get into our prediction segment then. I had a very hot take in here. But yes, let's start off with the Otter Oxide versus Hyperion one. I predicted Hyperion, but it has actually nothing to do with why Otter Oxide is lower in my power rankings. I wanted to predict them for this game anyway. And the reason I wanted to predict them for this game is because I feel like Hyperion is a team that can be so much better than what they have shown us all season. I ranked this team in like my top 5 when we came into the season. In like the first Nets episode, I thought this team would be much better than they were. And they really just weren't. Like they have played poor this whole, like I can't even like sugarcoat this. They are one of the bottom teams in the league right now. And there's a reason for it. It's because of how they're playing. But I think they have the potential to turn it around. And this is the game they need to do it in, right? So it's more of like, if Hyperion has the sauce, can actually compete in this league, this is the game they need to prove it in. All right. I think they need to win this game, and they need to win it at least convincingly enough for me to say it's not just a fluke, or it's not just because Otters are down McNewbie. That's what they need to do in this game. And I am predicting that they'll be able to do it. So yeah, that's my take. I'm sure you guys will have your own thoughts on that. We'll start off with you, Amintas. Why don't you tell us about yours?
Sure. So Otter Oxide is capable of playing different compositions, and like I mentioned at the top of the hour, or not that far back, but like when we were talking about the power rankings, I think Hyperion is just kind of a one-trick pony at this point, and I've yet to really see them show signs of life on a comp outside of Brawl, which is really important, especially against a team like Otter Oxide, where the DPS are like the focal point. You need to be able to like adapt and actually counter that play style by making a couple hero swaps sometimes, especially at this level. It's not just, play style changes that can fix your problems. And not to mention, I think Hyperion is kind of on the downslope, especially after playing Growlulu in their previous match. It's just going to probably be an uphill battle for them, and that's why I wanted to give the advantage to Otter Oxide.
All right, what about you, Sempra?
I think both teams rely on their DPS, like, pretty heavily. So the obvious issue is if one DPS lineup is better than the other DPS lineup, one team is gonna roll. I think that's
Only one of these teams has Hawk. Is that your
right.
thought process?
One of the teams has Hawk. Sorry,
I
King.
think that's fair.
So if you have two teams that rely on the same thing, but one of them is better, I think that's gonna cause issues. That's pretty much it. That's my reasoning. I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right. We'll move on to the next game then, which is Phoenix versus Volume Zero. You guys both purchased Phoenix for this. I'm a little surprised about that. I think of the two teams, Volume Zero has shown us a lot more than the other two. I think Volume Zero, they beat Los Beefers, who is pretty high on all of our power rankings. So I'm curious to know. I think my pick's pretty straightforward, but I want to know from you guys why you think Phoenix is going to be able to take it. We'll start off with you, Sempra.
I think I messed up. I think Volume Zero is gonna win.
Awesome. Thank you, Sempra, for your top tier analysis. Let's go to you, Amintas. What do you think?
Sure. So like I mentioned about, putting stock in results that far back, that was a month and a half ago, and they 3-2'd Los Beefers. So I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that I think Los Beefers was struggling back then and now they're improving. Whereas the last two matches from Volume 0 have both been 0-3s against Growly Wind Under Oxide, where they have failed to get anything started for themselves. And it's, it's almost entirely through Rogue and Softcat, through which Volume 0 operates. Whereas Phoenix, I feel like this is going to be a bit of a weird take here, but just because like they have their talent spread out a little further, other people can carry these fights outside of just Rogue and Softcat for Volume 0. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm predicting a Phoenix victory. Obviously, when you have the two bottom teams in the league playing each other, I feel like anything can happen. So it's either going to be a total wash or like the sloppiest 3-2 you've ever seen.
All right. I don't really need to hype up the next match because my great producer spoiled all of our Preds for it. I think this one's, I would say, pretty straightforward. I mean, we've talked about both these teams a lot. I don't think anyone here thinks DCR has what it takes to beat Rogue Dragons. I think Rogue Dragons is a team that plays very fast. Do they one trick brawl? Yeah. And do I think that's a problem for them against the higher ranked teams? Maybe, who can actually adjust to it. But against DCR, I don't see them having a problem because DCR also runs a lot of brawl heavy stuff. And they run Junkrat and stuff. I just think Rogue Dragons is going to play fast, play strong, and they're going to be able to take this one pretty easily.
Go ahead, Sempra. Oh, he's on mute.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think DCR is as good as 4-0 suggests. That's kind of it. I think Rogue Dragons has a lot to prove also. So, yeah.
As for my take on it, I feel like it's going to come down to tank line. And like in the last match that I saw from DCR, the tank line was the weak link for sure. Like their DPS are still very capable. We talked about that already. But especially in rush mirrors, it's really about like how far you can push the limits with your tanks. And Rogue Dragons has already limit tested against every other team so far. DCR is probably not going to stand a chance. If they do win, though, it's going to be by far the biggest upset this week.
I would agree with that pretty heavily. And now for our probably most contested match of the week, we're gonna have Los Beefers versus Crusaders. I think my take's pretty straightforward. I think these teams are pretty even in skill. The difference is going to be that Los Beefers plays a lot of weird things that can beat like brawl comps. And the only thing we've seen Crusaders be really strong at all season is brawl comps. Have we seen them run a couple of other things? Yeah. And they weren't really like reinventing the wheel in any of those camps. I think their brawl is really strong. I think they have a really good sense of like target focus. I've mentioned that Marcus is an excellent target caller. But brawl is really hard to run, especially against the Sigma ball composition we saw out of Los Beefers. And, we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show. There's definitely ways to get around it. You can pick certain maps to get around it. But it's like, I think the real, like, easiest way to be a comp like that, especially on some of the maps we're seeing on, like, you just need to be able to have other tools other than that brawl composition. And Crusaders hasn't proved that they have those other tools yet. The sharpest tool in their box is easily their brawl, and it's the one they use to solve every problem, right? And it doesn't always work for them, and I don't think it's going to work against Beefers. I think Beefers will take this one, but I definitely think it will be pretty close. I think a 3-1 or 3-2 is definitely in store for us. I doubt this one will be a 3-0. Let's throw it over to you now, Sempra. You're the odd one out here, so why don't you explain to us what you thought about it?
I think that I don't know. I think that Crusaders are good. I think they're underrated. Not by much. I think the DPS lineup is very strong. I think their tank lineup is pretty decent. I think their support lineup is way better. So if they can work around Los Beefers, they win. That's all they have to do.
Okay. Definitely some bold takes there, I'd say.
Yeah, my only issue with it is it's like I don't think it's even related to DPS. It's probably just between Firebats and like how hard Crusaders can work to counter him. Because at this point, it's like a foregone conclusion that this guy just one tricks Wrecking Ball in a lot of these matches. Because if he doesn't, it just is not a good look for the team. So you can kind of at that point just build a strategy to play through that, right? If you're Crusaders. Problem is, they clearly are not trying to do that. They one trick their own composition in their own right. Like they're not thinking about, okay, how do we make adjustments, right? Like what kind of heroes can we swap to? Maybe Crusaders gets an advantage there, but it's looking unlikely. So that's why I went with Beefers.
All right. No, I think that's fair. I want to touch on a little bit what you said there, Sempra. I think the brawl is good. I wouldn't say though that they have like a great advantage in like players. I think the Beefers players are extremely strong. I think they get underrated a lot. And I wasn't really sure about it because when I think of DPS players, the thing I look at a lot is like your ability to finish kills, right? Something that makes Hawk an unbelievable player in my mind is he is so good about picking a target and making sure it's dead, right? A lot of DPS, especially like at this elo, right, where we're talking like low diamond, maybe even into high diamond, right? A lot of the issues DPS players have is that they can hit shots and they can do good things, but they can't get that follow up shot. They can't finish that kill. They can't bite the head off the snake, right? And I didn't see Beaver's DPS doing that a lot. I just saw that their positioning is pretty good, and I thought they were okay mechanically, right? But then I had an interview with Los Beefers after the Rogue Dragons game, and they mentioned that like their players are extremely good at staying alive. And so I went back and I watched the VOD, and I saw a lot of different situations in which Talo or Blue Jay would get contested, and they would get out of there really well. They have a really, really good survival instinct. And something about Overwatch is the longer you're able to stay alive, the more value you can get. Obviously, getting the most kills will win you matches, right? But staying alive means that the enemy's not getting kills, which means that you have more opportunities to get your own kills, and it's just better, right? And then I looked up to see if this was backed by stats, and it is. Talo takes the least damage of like any DPS player. He's extremely solid in that regard about being smart, staying alive, and he's also leading in like damage categories too. Like he has a ton of damage per 10. I believe he's top 5. And so I definitely think Beefers have similar skill level to Crusaders. And I think if Crusaders does run comps that they can beat Beefers like comps on, I think they'll win. But because it is just the comp that Beefers run is a direct counter to what Crusaders runs. That is the only reason I pick Beefers here is just because I think the composition is going to be a little bit too strong against them.
Yes.
Yeah. You can go.
Don't know wall.
I just agree. Like, there's not much else to say about this match besides it's like a comp diff. And if Crusaders changes something, forces Beefers out of their comfort zone, they're gonna have a chance. But I mean, just based off of past results, it's looking unlikely.
All right, Sempra, any last words on this one before we wrap things up?
Beefers are good, but they rely on weird strategies. I don't know.
So does Chengdu.
I
Just saying. Either way.
I mean, yeah, I don't care. Hello?
All right, sounds good. All right, well, that's gonna do it for our show tonight. Thank you guys all for coming out. Thank you guys for joining me here on the show, Sempra and Amintas. It was nice having you guys on. Like the takes, like the discussions. So yeah, that'll do it for this episode of The Nest. Thank you guys.
Adios.
She left her body and hovered above me. I saw no shadow. I looked around, searched every building and home that I found. I saw no shadow, but felt a glow. The warmth inside me, it kept me afloat. It felt like heaven had found my bones and gave me comfort when I feel alone. Now you're gone.